Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine dedicating your entire professional life, right, to protecting others, to finding those digital cracks before the bad guys do, only to find yourself accused of the very crimes you fought against.
Yeah, it's a tough one to wrap your head around.
That's the extraordinary, almost unbelievable journey of Alberto Daniel Hill, a cybersecurity expert from Uruguay. His story became, well, infamous because he was, as far as anyone knows, the first person unjustly imprisoned for a computer crime in his country.
Mm.
It's just this masterclass in good intentions, clashing with, I guess, totally unforeseen consequences. And ultimately, it led to this profound transformation that reshaped not just his own life, but the very legal landscape of a nation.
What's truly fascinating here and why we're doing this deep dive is that Alberto's case isn't merely some personal ordeal or, a tragic anecdote. It's actually a powerful microcosm of the global challenges facing cybersecurity and the profound inadequacies within legal systems that are really struggling to keep pace with technology. And also our evolving understanding of digital ethics. His experience shines this stark, unforgiving light on that often misunderstood world where complex code meets very real-world consequences.
So today we're diving deep into Alberto's singular perspective, really exploring his thoughts on the true meaning of justice, the perilous tightrope of responsible disclosure, and how his traumatic experience against all odds actually became a powerful catalyst for huge systemic change.
And we've got a lot to draw on here. Our deep dive uses a rich array of source material, multiple candid interviews with Alberto himself, some in-depth analyses of court documents, extensive news reports from Uruguay, and even a close look at the recently approved Uruguay National Cybersecurity Strategy.
A document his case directly influenced. Right?
Directly influenced. So you're going to hear his direct, unfiltered thoughts and really understand how this whole ordeal redefined his entire outlook on, well, pretty much everything.
So let's set the scene. Go back to October 2014. It's a completely normal Saturday afternoon, pretty mundane. Alberto is at his ex-girlfriend's house.
Okay.
She asks him for a simple, everyday favor. Help her book an appointment through the website of her medical provider, a large institution called Círculo Católico. Just an innocent request, something lots of us might ask a tech-savvy friend, right?
Sure, happens all the time.
But what happens next isn't mundane at all. For Alberto, it quickly escalated from just a casual favor to, well, a security professional's absolute worst nightmare. He describes it as this immediate moment of profound shock, but also that kind of innate professional curiosity that drives people like him.
Precisely. And you have to remember who Alberto is. This isn't just some guy messing around. We're talking over 2 decades of experience as a highly respected computer engineer in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Someone who'd worked for the Uruguayan government as a security consultant, investigated malware, done audits, even digital forensics for Interpol. He was just doing what comes naturally to him. He approached the task with an observant, security-first mindset.
Just couldn't help himself.
Exactly. And what he discovered was, frankly, jaw-droppingly simple, yet critically severe. He recounts trying some ridiculous things in the login fields, almost like a reflex action, just to see how robust the system was.
Standard procedure for someone like him.
Totally. And to his utter disbelief, these attempts, which should have failed instantly, actually worked. He gained full administrator access to Círculo Católico's entire system just by entering admin as both the username and password.
No way. Admin. Seriously.
Seriously, he highlights that admin has been a known default login vulnerability for over 45 years. Yet here it was exposing critical infrastructure. He immediately characterized this as a solid 10 out of 10 critical red alert vulnerability, one of the most well-known, severe, and just dangerously easy to exploit flaws out there.
A 10 out of 10 red alert sounds absolutely catastrophic. What was the scale of this exposure? What was actually at risk?
It was immense. What immediately struck Alberto, what he really fixated on, was the sheer scale and sensitivity of the data that was just laid bare. This wasn't some small breach. It exposed over 200,000 highly sensitive medical records.
Wow.
Think patient histories, diagnoses, treatments. Alongside that, comprehensive financial information of the company and even their medication stock levels.
Good grief.
To truly grasp the impact, you got to consider this. 200,000 records meant this vulnerability potentially impacted nearly 9% of Uruguay's entire population.
9%?
Yeah. For Alberto, it was unequivocally clear. This was a ticking time bomb, a massive unaddressed security hole that just screamed for immediate attention, not just for the institution, but for the privacy and well-being of hundreds of thousands of citizens. His thought was immediately about the potential harm.
And his immediate response was like textbook ethical hacking, right? He didn't hesitate for a second, did he?
Not at all. Alberto tells us that within literally minutes, certainly no more than maybe 15 minutes of discovering this monumental flaw, he fired off an email to the Uruguayan CERT.
CERT, that's the Computer Emergency Response Team.
Exactly. Their official national body responsible for handling cybersecurity incidents. He emailed cert@cert.i, and crucially, he wasn't trying to hide anything or, exploit the situation. He openly included his own IP address in the report.
Okay, so totally transparent.
Completely, making it unequivocally clear who he was and where the report was originating from. His thinking was purely about doing the right thing, fulfilling his professional and ethical duty.
And the validation came almost instantly, which must have felt like a huge relief for him at the time.
It was, and that's a really critical detail in his mind. In less than an hour, Santiago Paz, who was the director of the Uruguayan CERT back then, responded directly to Alberto, confirming the accuracy of his report.
Wow, that quick.
Super quick. For Alberto, this rapid professional acknowledgement was incredibly significant. He explicitly states that from his perspective, his thought process was, once CERT confirmed it, the problem was no longer his.
Right, he'd done his part, handed it off.
Exactly. He felt he had done his part, handed off the critical information, and could sleep without any problem, believing he had fulfilled his ethical and professional responsibility. This is a crucial point because unlike many nations that, incentivize responsible disclosure through established bug bounty programs or legal safe harbors for ethical hackers.
Right, protections for researchers.
Uruguay then, and largely still today, had a legal vacuum in this area. There were no formal mechanisms or legal guarantees, no protections for security researchers who uncover and report vulnerabilities.
So he was acting purely on his conscience and professional ethics, no expectation of reward or anything.
Exactly that. Alberto acted purely out of professional curiosity and, genuinely, a deep-seated desire to prevent harm to such a massive number of people. He wasn't looking for praise, financial reward, or even recognition. He genuinely says he wasn't expecting not even a thank you.
He just wanted the hole fixed.
He just wanted this gaping security hole affecting nearly a tenth of his country's population to be urgently resolved. Think about the chilling effect this legal vacuum has, right? How many critical vulnerabilities go unreported in countries without these protections, simply because researchers fear exactly what happened to Alberto?
Yeah, it discourages people from doing the right thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's a system that inadvertently punishes good intentions, creates this climate of fear among security professionals, and potentially leaves a country dangerously vulnerable because flaws aren't getting reported. This whole situation is just a powerful indictment of a legal system failing to keep pace with technological realities.
And yet, despite that initial sense of relief, that feeling of having done the right thing, Alberto's perspective on that decision has, well, understandably, shifted dramatically over time. Looking back now with all the pain and suffering he endured, he reflects with just profound sadness. He now says, and this is a direct quote from him, "I do regret recording the whole thing, and I would have probably walked away from everything and said nothing to anybody."
Wow. That's heavy.
It's truly heartbreaking, isn't it? A reflection on how his good intentions were ultimately punished, leaving him with this deep-seated regret for simply trying to help.
And that regret only deepened when the problem, persisted. In April 2015, almost 6 months after his initial report.
6 months! It was still there.
Still there. His ex-girlfriend once again asked him to access the Circulo Católico system. He complied, despite, as he says, his better judgment and this internal alarm bell ringing in his head.
Oh, boy.
What he found was that the vulnerability wasn't just still there, it was inexplicably worse.
Worse? How could it be worse?
This time, he could access all patient medical records without any username or password at all. He discovered a classic insecure direct object reference vulnerability, or IDOR.
IDOR, okay. What does that mean in simple terms?
It meant by simply manipulating a numerical parameter in the website address, the URL for instance, changing patient ID 1 to patient ID 2, he could bypass any authentication and just browse through any patient record sequentially.
So he could literally just change a number in the web address and pull up a different person's private medical file. That's shockingly simple and terrifying.
It is. It's a basic, yet often critical flaw that speaks volumes about a profound lack of security awareness in the system's design. Again, he immediately reported this new, even more severe flaw to CERT.
Did they respond this time?
He received another ticket number, another acknowledgement of his report. But tragically, no further follow-up or communication about a resolution ever came. His internal response, his thought process, he recalls, was simply, "Alberto, stop entering to this site."
Yeah, probably wise.
He knew even then he was stepping into dangerous territory. Not because he thought he was doing anything wrong, but because the system itself was so utterly broken and the official channels seemed unresponsive.
And he emphasizes, right, that he wasn't trying to hack it in a criminal sense. He viewed his actions as very silly and stupid, but not because he was actively trying to break in, but because the system was so fundamentally flawed that anyone could literally just stumble into such critical data.
Exactly. For him, the core issue wasn't about the act of breaking in. It was about the profound wrongness that such sensitive personal medical information, impacting nearly a tenth of his country's population, was left so utterly exposed and unprotected.
His curiosity just lit up the problem.
Precisely. His curiosity, which is a hallmark of any good security professional, simply illuminated a glaring and dangerous incompetence on the part of the medical provider, and ultimately the system meant to protect its citizens. His thought was, this is just wrong. And it's crucial to grasp, as we said, Alberto wasn't some rogue amateur or a thrill seeker trying to cause chaos. He was a highly respected computer engineer, tons of experience, government work, Interpol forensics.
Deeply knowledgeable about crypto too, right? Written papers, given talks globally.
Exactly. He even started hacking way back at 12, learning assembly language to modify video games, a classic origin story for many ethical hackers. This was a man deeply rooted in the ethical side of the field, driven by curiosity and a desire to improve security, not exploit it.
Which makes what happened next even more bewildering.
Infinitely more. This profound professional context makes the bewildering and ultimately unjust events that followed even more shocking from his perspective. His motivations were pure, his actions responsible, yet the system perceived him as a threat.
So fast forward, September 11, 2017. 3 years after his initial ethical disclosures, the scene dramatically shifts from responsible researcher to, well, target.
Yeah, this is where it gets really dark.
Alberto describes the moment as a true nightmare. He vividly recounts Interpol agents knocking on his door early in the morning, executing a search warrant, and arresting him. He was, in his own words, completely lost and didn't understand what was going on. Just an immediate crushing blow, ripping him from his normal life without any clear explanation. The sheer bewilderment of that moment is something he still struggles to articulate.
His account of the interrogation process is chilling. It highlights this profound, almost comical disconnect between the authorities and the technical realities of his world. Alberto states he was treated really badly. He describes being subjected to hours of questioning by officers who, he quickly realized, had absolutely no grasp of basic technical concepts. They asked irrelevant questions that make no sense from a technical point of view, focusing on bizarre stereotypes rather than any actual evidence.
Like they had a preconceived notion of a hacker.
Exactly. He felt that no matter what I say, we are not talking the same language, a frustrating and terrifying realization when your freedom depends on being understood. What's more disturbing, and something Alberto explicitly accuses, is that one specific officer, Winston Rodriguez, resorted to psychological threats against his mother and girlfriend.
Oh, that's awful. Why?
Alberto claims it was a deliberate coercive tactic, designed purely to extract a false confession from him, demonstrating a desperate attempt to create a narrative when technical understanding was just completely absent. His thought was they were trying to break him.
Stuck in that cell, what was going through his mind? Alberto recounts his initial desperate thoughts. He kept repeating to himself, there must be a mistake. Tomorrow I will surely be home.
Holding on to hope.
Yeah, that hopeful illusion, however, was quickly shattered as the hours dragged on. The gut-wrenching realization that he was wrong, that he would be held for longer, possibly indefinitely, hit him with devastating force. He describes his body shaking uncontrollably, picturing prison as hell, and truly believing he wouldn't survive a single day behind bars.
Fear must have been immense.
Visceral, consuming. To cope with the overwhelming shock, the incomprehensible injustice unfolding, the sheer terror. His mind was like in a standby mode, he says. Just a raw self-preservation mechanism to avoid total collapse. It was his brain shutting down, protecting him from a reality too painful to process.
And while he's going through this personal hell, the public narrative is being shaped.
Instantly. The media, without full context or understanding, maybe fueled by the authorities' own misinterpretations, quickly painted me as the worst cyber criminal, cyber terrorist on earth, he says.
Oh, man.
His arrest became the sensational headline, creating an infamous public persona overnight, just completely distorting his identity and actions in the public eye. He went from being a respected professional to a symbol of some shadowy threat that many in Uruguay likely didn't understand, further isolating him and his family. And that narrative, that image, was further bolstered by the dramatic confiscation of all his personal and professional equipment, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Alberto describes the police involved as untrained, ill-equipped, and incompetent. They seized a huge volume of his belongings, interpreting virtually everything through this lens of hacker paraphernalia.
Seeing what they wanted to see.
Absolutely, a clear reflection of their predetermined and utterly incorrect idea of what a cybersecurity professional actually looks like or uses. It was pure confirmation bias. They just saw what they expected to see.
So what kind of stuff did they take? What were his explanations?
Well, Alberto's explanations for each item seized reveal this stark, almost comedic contrast to the police's wildly inaccurate assumptions. For example, he had numerous laptops, cell phones, and hard drives.
Okay, pretty standard for a tech person.
Totally standard. He explained that he keeps old computers to experiment with different operating systems and applications. Completely common practice for anyone in IT or security, essential for testing and development. And his old phones simply piled up in drawers over time as he upgraded, much like many of us have.
Right.
But what's normal for a tech professional looked like a cache of suspicious tools to an untrained eye. Their thought process was just completely off base.
And he also had what looked like a lot of cryptocurrency wallets, right? Specifically Ledger Nano S devices, and even a box full of them.
Yeah, and his explanation was totally legitimate. He was a reseller of them here in this part of the world, receiving large shipments directly from Ledger in France as part of his actual business.
So a legitimate business activity.
Completely. But the police, utterly oblivious to what these specialized hardware wallets were, didn't know what this was. And incredibly, they mistook them for generic pen drives or USB drives.
Seriously, they thought hardware wallets were just USB sticks.
Yep. It immediately illustrates the fundamental lack of technical literacy and training within the arresting officers. They couldn't distinguish a highly secure crypto device from a simple storage stick. His thought must have been, are these guys for real?
Okay, then there was the item that probably looked the most incriminating to them. A credit card cloner and blank cards. How did he explain that?
His reasoning here was equally pragmatic and professional, though obviously far less understood by law enforcement. He used them for his legitimate business as a ledger distributor and research into card security for Euclid debit cards.
Yeah, so security testing.
Exactly. He was testing the security and chips of these new emerging cards, a form of due diligence and security research for his business. He emphasized that the machine itself is legal. Hotels use similar devices to make room keys, for example.
Right.
But its software for illegal cloning is notoriously difficult to obtain. He stressed repeatedly that card writer was never used and every one of the cards were blank. He even had a collection of his own expired personal credit cards from way back, like 1995, which he just kept.
But the police saw Carter.
Immediately. They jumped to the conclusion he was a carder, someone who buys stolen credit card numbers and prints them onto new cards.
Yeah.
Again, seeing malice where there was just research and outdated personal items.
The amount of cash found also raised immediate suspicion, right? $1,400 USD, 8,000 EUR, some Brazilian reals, Uruguayan pesos. A fair bit of mixed currency.
Yeah, and Alberto patiently explained the origins. The euros were from selling a couple bitcoins to a tourist, back when Bitcoin was trading around 4,000 a year each, a legitimate, high-value transaction in the crypto market at the time.
Yeah, baby good.
The U.S. dollars, similarly, were from operations with bitcoins. In a world where cryptocurrency was still not widely understood by law enforcement, let alone the general public, this perfectly legitimate activity was immediately deemed suspicious and indicative of illicit earnings.
And the anonymous mask. And this supposed guillotine.
Almost comical. The anonymous mask was, for Alberto, simply a collector's item. He says he likes to collect all those kind of things related to hacking, including T-shirts. Just a nod to pop culture and the hacker ethos.
Right, like having a movie poster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As for the guillotine, his mother, when questioned by police about it, really laughed a lot because it was, in fact, a simple paper-cutting device, a common office tool wildly misinterpreted as some sort of menacing head-cutting instrument.
A paper cutter, that's unbelievable. From mistaking crypto wallets for USBs to a paper cutter for guillotine, it sounds almost comically absurd.
It does, doesn't it? But beneath that absurdity, there's this real tragic irony. How a complete lack of basic understanding can turn the mundane into the menacing and just destroy someone's life in the process.
Yeah.
What Alberto's story reveals about this whole process, his takeaway thought, is a stark, devastating realization. The justice system wasn't prepared and had a predetermined idea of what a hacker looks like, and wasn't capable of looking at the evidence with clear eyes. They simply saw what they expected to see, based on outdated stereotypes and profound ignorance, not what was actually there. A catastrophic misjudgment.
And this profound technical ignorance, this inability to see the facts, extended directly into the courtroom where his fate was actually decided. The charges weren't even hacking because, incredibly, at the time, hacking wasn't actually a defined crime in Uruguay's penal code.
Right, which is wild in itself. So instead, he was charged with attempted extortion and fraudulent knowledge of secret information. Basically, a convoluted legal attempt to make his actions fit into existing, older statutes.
So how did that play out in court? What was his perspective on the proceedings?
Alberto's critique of the legal proceedings is scathing and deeply personal. He recounts how the judge and prosecutor just struggled with even the most basic computer concepts. They asked irrelevant questions that showcased a complete lack of grasp on technical realities.
Like what?
He was asked about the very concept of an IP address, or how a tool like Metasploit works fundamental terms to him, right? But seemingly alien concepts to those presiding over his case. He felt like he was speaking a completely different language. His thought was, how can they judge this if they don't even understand the basics?
And the way digital evidence was handled sounds completely unprofessional, totally against forensic best practices.
Oh, it was incredibly improper. Almost shockingly so, for a case dealing with cybercrime. Server logs, which are absolutely crucial digital evidence for understanding network activity,
The raw data.
were incredibly exchanged as plain text emails instead of being forensically preserved with hash values and proper chain of custody documentation.
Just emailed back and forth, like attachments.
Yeah. And even more critically, Alberto's own phone was turned on and connected to Google while in police custody.
No, that breaks chain of custody, right?
Absolutely. It's a blatant violation. This is paramount in digital forensics. Any unauthorized alteration to a device, even just powering it on or connecting it to a network, can potentially corrupt data, introduce new data, or cast significant doubt on the integrity and admissibility of any evidence found on that device in court. It fundamentally undermines the reliability of the entire investigation. His thought must have been pure frustration at the incompetence.
It sounds like a comedy of errors if it weren't so utterly tragic. And what about the so-called pathetic extortion email Alberto was accused of sending? You mentioned that earlier.
Right, that's a key piece of the puzzle. And another example of the prosecution's baffling oversight from Alberto's perspective. He revealed that the crucial absence of a Bitcoin address in the supposed ransom demand, the email literally read, send 15 Bitcoins to the following address, but the address itself was just blank.
Blank, like nothing there.
Nothing there. This glaring omission, the fact that there was no destination for the alleged ransom, was never questioned by authorities. They completely ignored it. As Alberto sarcastically notes, it was the most pathetic ransomware attack I ever saw, highlighting the sheer incompetence of the accusation. His thought was, how could they miss this?
Beyond the questionable evidence handling and the bizarre email, Alberto also vehemently asserts that nothing was ever released or leaked from the medical provider system during the supposed attack.
That's a crucial point for his innocence, isn't it?
It is. It goes to the heart of whether any actual harm occurred beyond the discovery. He points to the server logs, the very records of network activity, that showed only about 200 megabytes of outgoing traffic during the alleged incident.
200 megs, that's tiny.
Exactly. He logically argues that a database containing 200,000 sensitive medical records would realistically be terabytes of data, not mere megabytes. It simply didn't add up to data theft or any kind of large-scale exfiltration.
Furthermore, the police claim to trace the email's IP address back to his house, a claim Alberto dismisses as false and technically impossible based on his activity. He explained his IP address was only involved in a dropped connection from a Shodan plugin he used purely for professional curiosity.
Shodan, that's like a search engine for connected devices, right? Used by researchers.
Precisely. He was simply doing reconnaissance, a routine part of his professional curiosity. But the connection was immediately blocked by the firewall, meaning no malicious activity occurred.
Right.
But they didn't understand that nuance. He also highlights the absurdity by noting that a second person was also arrested in connection with the case.
Right.
This fact alone, he argues, made the IP tracing claim completely stupid. as no single email could possibly have two distinct IP addresses originating from different physical locations. His thought was the police's own evidence contradicted itself.
Despite all these glaring inconsistencies, the technical misunderstandings, the questionable evidence, his lawyer's arguments about his character, lack of criminal record, on September 11th, 2017, the judge made her decision. Alberto was sentenced to preventive prison.
Yeah, pretrial detention.
Her reasoning: that he posed a flight risk, which she found ridiculous given his deep roots in Uruguay. And more bizarrely, that his high computer knowledge meant he could somehow alter the rest of the process.
Alter evidence remotely from prison.
Exactly. Alberto found these arguments ridiculous. He wryly likened the idea of his computer knowledge allowing him to remotely alter evidence in an Interpol facility to having telepathic abilities. It felt like an argument born purely of fear, not logic. His thought was, they're scared because they don't understand.
His lawyer, who had apparently been initially confident Alberto would be released on bail, was visibly shocked when the decision came down. Alberto describes the moment as a complete shock, feeling his body shaking uncontrollably, his world just collapsing. He truly believed this is the end.
Devastating.
He felt the judge simply couldn't understand his profile, that of a seasoned, ethical cybersecurity professional, and acted purely out of fear of the unknown. It was easier, he postulates in his reflections, to simply lock him away, to remove the perceived unknown element.
And even his family offering serious assets wasn't enough.
No. The profound injustice was hammered home when even his mother's incredibly generous offer of 2 houses and other assets as bail was flatly denied. This cemented for Alberto the crushing realization that the system was not operating on the principles of justice he had once believed in. His faith was just shattered.
So Alberto spent a harrowing 8 months and a fraction, nearly 9 months, in prison. He describes this period with a chilling candor, viewing prison not as a place of rehabilitation, but, in his own words, as a university of crime.
A hard perspective.
He profoundly believes that people often get out being worse than they were before being there, having learned nefarious skills and developed criminal connections. He recounts the immense mental and emotional effort it took to be very strong, and to actively avoid the temptation of becoming a criminal himself, surrounded by an environment designed to pull individuals down a darker path. For him, it wasn't just incarceration. It was a daily struggle to maintain his own integrity. His thought was constantly, don't let this place change you for the worse.
And the personal losses Alberto endured during and after his imprisonment are just staggering.
Yeah.
They go far beyond the immediate trauma. Financially, he lost over $1 million in cryptocurrency assets.
$1 million? How?
Because his phone, which held the crucial 2-factor authentication needed to access his accounts, was seized and never returned. His Ledger Nano S hardware wallets were also either compromised during seizure or simply unrecoverable afterwards.
Oh my God.
He points out that with current market prices, we're talking Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, cryptos that have seen huge growth since then.
Right.
Those lost assets, specifically 26 Bitcoins, 1,000 Ethereum, and 10,000 Litecoins, could now potentially be worth an astonishing $10 million.
$10 million. Lost just like that.
Just like that. This wasn't just a personal financial loss. It was a complete obliteration of the wealth he had carefully accrued. He also highlights the societal cost, the absurdity from his perspective, noting that taxpayers paid approximately $900 for each month I was in prison.
For a nonviolent person who reported a vulnerability.
Exactly. For a nonviolent individual whom he believed could have contributed meaningfully outside, he calls this ridiculous. He characterizes it as a blatant societal misallocation of resources, punishing a security expert rather than leveraging his skills. His thought is, what a waste for everyone.
Beyond the financial devastation, which is almost unfathomable, the mental health consequences for Alberto were severe and long-lasting, weren't they?
Absolutely brutal. He was diagnosed with PTSD and deep depression, conditions that required years of therapy to even begin processing the trauma of his incarceration and the profound sense of injustice.
Years of therapy.
At one point, the anxiety and emotional distress became so extreme that he experienced an overdose on Xanax, leading to a 2-hour coma and hospitalization. His experience clearly left deep psychological scars, demonstrating the immense human cost when a justice system is unprepared or acts unjustly.
When did he finally get out?
His release finally came at the end of May 2018. But it wasn't some sudden act of justice being realized. It was the hard-won result of multiple appeals that ultimately overturned the judge's initial decision to deny him bail.
So the appeals court saw it differently.
Eventually, yes. But even then, his freedom was contingent on paying a substantial $10,000 bail. A final hurdle that must have felt like an insult after nearly 9 months of wrongful imprisonment.
Yeah, like adding insult to injury.
Exactly. This whole experience, culminating in that bail payment for freedom, was a stark, almost brutal revelation for Alberto about the true nature of justice. Or maybe injustice. He observed the profound disparity in the system, reflecting that justice is a beautiful word. But in reality, maybe it's just a beautiful word and justice doesn't really exist, but rather justice is depending on who you are, how much power you have, how much money you have.
That's a really cynical but maybe realistic takeaway.
It's how he felt. They felt all the things I thought that I believe were working, all the things I really trust in the system were like falling like a domino effect. This crushing disillusionment led to a profound internal shift. He realized, in his words, he was really naive and silly in his previous beliefs about inherent fairness. This experience, he says, really made me open my eyes and say, okay, Alberto, wake up. Nothing. You are stupid. This is the real world. A painful but ultimately clarifying moment of awakening.
So, in the immediate aftermath of his release, Alberto was just consumed by this whirlwind of intense negative emotions. He talks about being full of hate against the system, hate against the people that were involved, and this overwhelming raw sense of anger.
Understandable.
And his public image had also been completely shattered by the sensationalist media, which he says painted me as the worst cyber criminal, cyber terrorist on earth, leaving him feeling that his image was completely destroyed. He had to find a way, anyway, to channel that immense rage and frustration.
So what did he do? How did he cope with that?
His decision, his way of fighting back, was to shout out to the world by openly sharing his story. For him, this became a profound relief for his mental health.
Telling his side.
Exactly. He recognized that he desperately needed to tell my side of the story, especially since no one in Uruguay seemed interested in hearing it initially, still clinging to that sensationalized media narrative. It was an act of personal liberation, an attempt to reclaim his narrative and maybe purge the years of suppressed trauma. His thought was, silence is just letting them win.
And did it work? Did people listen?
His true breakthrough came in November 2018. His story was featured in episode 25 of Jack Reisetter's incredibly popular Darknet Diaries podcast.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a huge platform in the InfoSec world.
Massive. This was a monumental turning point. The episode gained immense global visibility, reached over 1 million people, and instantly transformed Alberto into, as he describes it, kind of a rock star in the international InfoSec community.
So the global community got it.
They got it. This widespread exposure, finally hearing his truth amplified by a respected platform, allowed him to finally release years of pent-up frustration and anger. It transformed a deeply personal trauma into a powerful public rallying cry, and he found vindication in the global community. His thoughts shifted towards, okay, people do understand.
And his story's momentum only grew from there, right? It wasn't just the podcast.
No, it was further amplified at the prestigious 35C3 conference in Germany by Linus Neumann, leading to hundreds of thousands more views and really solidifying his global recognition and support.
That's incredible. So how does he view it all now, reflecting back?
Reflecting on this incredible, arduous journey, Alberto now says with this remarkable sense of peace, it isn't destroying me. Actually, I think I'm stronger. Despite the unfathomable financial losses, the millions of dollars that just vanished.
Potential $10 million.
Yeah. He says he is very happy right now and doesn't feel any kind of ouch when discussing what he lost. He genuinely sees it instead as a valuable learning experience.
Wow. To go from such hate and anger to seeing it as a learning experience, that's quite a transformation.
It really is. This profound shift in perspective from deep bitterness to one of strength and acceptance is truly remarkable. It speaks volumes about the healing power of shared truth and finding that public support. His thinking fundamentally changed.
So what does Alberto do with this incredibly painful yet ultimately empowering experience? Does he just move on?
No way. He transforms it into activism. Instead of retreating into bitterness, he began sharing his story relentlessly on social media, armed with only his cell phone, tirelessly pushing for legal reform and greater understanding of cybersecurity in Uruguay.
Using his platform.
Exactly. His individual ordeal, which could have crushed anyone, became a national movement, a driving force for change. His thought was, this can't happen to anyone else.
And the impact. Did it actually lead to real change in Uruguay?
The profound impact of his case on Uruguay's legal and governmental systems is undeniable. It became this powerful catalyst for systemic change that continues to ripple through the country even today. Firstly, it directly contributed to significant legislative reform.
Okay, like new laws.
Exactly. The new Ley 20.327, the Tipificación de Ciberdelitos, or cybercrime law, was finally approved in August 2023. This crucial law introduces entirely new, specific cybercrime types into Uruguay's penal code, finally addressing things like identity impersonation, computer fraud, data vulnerability.
Things that weren't crimes when he was charged.
Precisely. It explicitly aims to adapt the country's antiquated legal framework to the complex realities of modern cyber threats, something desperately needed and starkly highlighted by Alberto's case. His suffering forced the issue.
So his experience essentially forced the Uruguayan government to finally catch up to the digital age. Kicking and screaming, maybe?
That's a pretty good way to put it. And the impact wasn't just legislative, it reverberated across the entire judicial system. His case is now widely known internally as the worst nightmare for the Uruguayan General Prosecution Office.
Oof, I bet.
And it's openly cited as the point of inflection for much-needed change within their operations. As a direct result, a brand new structure, a dedicated cybersecurity unit, is actively being created within the Public Prosecutor's Office.
A specialized unit? That's huge.
It is. This unit will be staffed by professionals who are being rigorously trained by experts from England, specifically to develop competence in digital forensics, cybercrime investigation, and understanding the nuances of the digital world that were so profoundly absent in Alberto's case. His thought must be, finally, some expertise.
That is a massive shift. From total misunderstanding demonstrated in his case to actively building expertise.
Right.
And what about accountability? For the people who made such grievous errors in his case, did anything happen there?
This aspect is perhaps most gratifying for Alberto, validating his immense suffering. This accountability wasn't just some quiet reshuffle. It sent shockwaves through the Uruguayan governmental and law enforcement agencies.
Really? Like who?
Alberto explicitly states that the person in charge of the computer the crime has been already removed from his position, and this cascade extended to include the former director of Cyber of Security of Interpol, the former director of the Search of Uruguay, and the former director of the Security of Presidency.
Wow, high-level removals.
Very high level. For Alberto, this outcome was profoundly validating. He calls it the most beautiful and gratifying thing that ever happened in my life, because it proved that his painful ordeal was not in vain. It showed there were consequences for the system's profound failures and the severe misunderstanding of cybercrime at the highest levels. His thought was the price was high, but it led to real accountability.
And beyond these structural and personnel changes, Alberto himself is now directly involved in shaping the future, right? Sitting at the table with lawmakers.
Yes, incredibly. He is actively advising the Uruguayan Congress on digital and human rights, helping to shape future legislation to ensure fair processes for others.
From prisoner to advisor. Amazing.
He mentions being specifically invited to be part of those conversations and talk to them about his experience, sharing his firsthand insights into the perils of an unprepared legal system. This is a powerful testament to his transformation from victim to respected expert shaping national policy.
And all this feeds into their new national strategy.
Exactly. The Uruguay National Cybersecurity Strategy 2024-2030, which encompasses all these efforts, is a direct response to the growing sophistication of cyber threats like ransomware, supply chain attacks, and the insidious misuse of AI, including using AI to clone voices for sophisticated fraud and social engineering.
Scary stuff.
Yeah. The strategy emphasizes a people-centric, holistic, and proactive approach, underscoring the importance of articulation, collaboration, and investment across government, private sector, and civil society. It also highlights the global nature of these threats and the challenge of a lack of a unified international normative framework, underscoring Uruguay's commitment to international cooperation, like adhering to the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime.
Trying to get on the same page globally.
It's an incredible testament to resilience, but also a stark reminder that the systems we rely on need to constantly adapt to technology. After everything he's endured, everything he's learned, what's Alberto's core philosophy about cybersecurity now? He's often quoted as saying, "Hacking is not a crime. The intent behind it is."
That statement just encapsulates his entire ordeal, doesn't it? The very essence of his fight for justice and understanding. He distinguishes so sharply between the act of exploring a system driven by curiosity and a desire to identify vulnerabilities, what ethical hackers do, and the malicious intent to cause harm, steal data, or profit illegally.
And he has advice for people coming up in the field now.
He offers poignant, hard-won advice to aspiring cybersecurity professionals, drawing heavily from his own bitter lessons. Universities, he contends, don't teach you certain things that are going to happen in your life.
Like what?
Students, he warns, will encounter immense pressure, things that you weren't ever told that you were going to see, including difficult ethical dilemmas like discovering internal fraud within an organization or facing legal ambiguities where good intentions are misconstrued, like in his case. He stresses that you have to learn on the run how to handle these storms because you won't be prepared for the real-world complexities, the moral ambiguities, and the potential personal cost. His thought is, be ready for the human element, not just the tech.
And the chilling effect of his case on security researchers in Uruguay is clear and deeply concerning for the country's overall security. Alberto himself states, with this palpable sadness, "I don't report them anymore because I was forced to."
Wow. That's a powerful, tragic indication of how an unjust system can stifle the very ethical behavior it should desperately encourage, potentially leaving critical vulnerabilities unaddressed.
Yeah.
He reiterates that the natural curiosity of security professionals, which leads them to, for instance, modify a number and see how the system reacts, when they encounter a URL with plain text parameters, that very idle flaw he found is not a crime, that is not illegal.
Just poking around, seeing how it works.
Exactly. They're not altering anything to gain illicit access. They're simply observing system behavior, probing for weaknesses as part of their professional duty or curiosity. This foundational curiosity, he argues, is what drives innovation and protection in the field. And he finds it, in his words, much easier to work with machines than with people.
Huh. I think many tech people might agree.
Right. It's a profound statement reflecting on the immense complexity, unpredictability, and often illogical nature of human interactions and judicial systems, especially when compared to the predictable, logical world of code. His trauma has clearly made him wary of human systems, even as he dedicates his life to trying to fix them.
Despite everything, his call to action for individuals, even beyond cybersecurity, is actually quite inspiring and deeply personal. Find their passion and make a living from that.
Interesting.
He highlights his current engagement in the NFT world, not just as an investment, but respecting artists who pursue their dreams despite adversity, much like he pursued his passion for cybersecurity. For him, cybersecurity remains part of me, an intrinsic, undeniable aspect of his identity, regardless of the trauma. It's just deeply embedded in who he is. His core thought is, follow what drives you.
And finally, he holds a really critical view on the prison system, especially for nonviolent tech offenders, calling it a lose-lose situation.
Yeah, the University of Crime.
Exactly. He firmly believes prison acts as that university of crime that can either destroy individuals or make them worse, rather than rehabilitating them or allowing them to contribute positively to society. He passionately argues that alternative solutions like community work or letting individuals teach anything, computer sciences, to children would be far more beneficial for society and the individual.
Using their skills for good.
Precisely. Instead of wasting taxpayer money on incarceration, which in his case was $900 per month for a nonviolent offense, where he tried to help society could leverage the unique skills and intellect of these individuals for good, transforming a purely punitive measure into a productive one. This speaks to his profound belief in the value of knowledge and contribution over just locking people up, especially when their intent wasn't malicious.
What an incredible, albeit truly arduous journey Alberto Daniel Hill has traversed. From an ethical vulnerability reporter trying to protect hundreds of thousands of people, to an unjustly accused hacker thrown into prison, and now, miraculously, a driving force for significant legislative and judicial change in Uruguay.
Yeah, it's quite the arc.
His story is just a testament to the indomitable resilience of the human spirit and the profound, often painful lessons he's learned about justice, the crucial nuances of technology, and the power of personal transformation in the face of profound adversity. His reflections are just so powerful.
And this raises an important question for you, the listener, right? In a digital world where cyber threats are constantly evolving, where deepfakes can clone voices for sophisticated fraud, and AI systems push the boundaries of what's possible every day, how prepared are our systems, our laws, and maybe even we ourselves to navigate that complex, often blurry line between responsible discovery and criminal intent.
That's the core issue, isn't it?
Alberto's experience highlights that the technology almost always outpaces the legal frameworks designed to govern it. And that creates these dangerous gaps that can have devastating consequences for individuals trying to do the right thing.
Alberto's story is such a powerful reminder that while individual vigilance and, digital hygiene are crucial for all of us, true cybersecurity also demands an adaptable legal system and a willingness, maybe crucially, to understand the human element behind the code.
The intent.
So what responsibilities do we all bear in ensuring that justice can actually keep pace with technological change and that the next ethical actor who tries to do the right thing doesn't suffer the same fate? It's a question that resonates far beyond the borders of Uruguay, demanding our attention and a critical examination of how we define crime and justice in this increasingly digital world we all live in.